we are going to make something for storage. And there are quite a few YouTubers who have made similar to this. This is a storage basket. I'm going to do mine a little bit different. I'm going to make baskets for storage of charm packs and cuts of fabric. And I'm going to do them with no interfacing and show you how to make them sturdy just by sewing them. So what I've got here is a partial yard of fabric, and then I have a fat quarter. And I'm going to cut 20 by 16. And I'm a firm believer in using your energy in places where it makes sense. So this isn't, it's mostly flat, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. I'm going to cut the selvage off down here. I'm cutting a few layers at once. I never move my ruler until I'm sure I've got my cut made all the way through. And I'm going to line this up here at the 24-inch mark on my mat, and I'm going to go down to the 4-inch mark. And I'm going to cut 4 inches so I get my 20-inch piece this way. And so I have minimal waste. I'll set that aside because I will use those scraps. And then now I'm going to turn my fabric, and I'm working on a small area, very small mat, so I want to use all of the space to my advantage. Lining up on the 10 mark, and I need 16 for my pieces. So I'm going to go down here to 8 because 8 and 8 is 16. And I'm going to cut here. There we go. And these go over here to my scrap pile. Sorry about it taking a couple of passes to cut there. My shoulder's not feeling great today. Okay, so now we have a 16 by 20 for my lining. And we have two 16 by 20 outers. And I'll set one of those aside because I only need one of each here for this particular item. Making sure that I match them right sides together. I'm now going to fold them in half. This way so they match, and then I'm going to fold them in half this way so that they match. And then once I have them all folded, my 4 folds are right up here, and these are my 4 corner pieces. I'm going to take my square ruler, and I'm going to cut a 4.5-inch square. Out of this. If you can see, I've got 4.5 here, and I have 4.5 here. And I'm going to take my rotary cutter And I'm going to cut. Now, before I move it very far, I'm going to check, make sure, and I'm using my scissors to do the last of this because I don't want it to accidentally cut into my quarters. And these are not going to be trash. I'm going to reuse that scrap fabric. Other things. So now what we have is, a cross-shaped fabric right here. This is going to be our outside, and this is going to be our lining. And for my outside, I'm going to take one of my scraps of fabric here, and I'm going to turn it into a handle. Turn over the two edges, finger press them down, and then I'm going to fold into the middle. And I'm going to sew all the way around on the top. I'm going to put it in place where I want it on my outside. I'm going to put it right here in the center. Now we're going to use a couple of pins. Just going to pin the handle into place where I want it. And then I'm going to sew right here along these two sides. Just a little stitch to make that handle stay on there. Now what we're going to do is we are going to do some minor folding. I'm going to match up the top corner of these two sides together, and I'm going to pin them together. Honestly, I don't normally pin this. I just sew it. But if you're a beginner sewer, pinning is your friend. I'm going to do the same here, matching up that top corner and pulling it out flat. You can do opposite corners if you prefer. I just like to put them all together and go over to the sewing machine. I just make sure that my corners match and that my sides match there. machine, I am using a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm just going to sew right down these sides. You can backstitch a couple of stitches for stability. Now we have the outside of our box. Snip all my little threads off. So yes, they're still on my fabric. So this is right. This is inside out, and this is right side out. And I'm going to put them one inside the other so that the right sides are touching. And then I do always pin here. I'm going to nest my corners, which the quilters in the room will be familiar with. And there is one corner matched. Two corners matched. And I am putting a pin in those corners so that they stay where I put them. And I'm going to make sure that everything stays inside and that they are still right sides touching. So there is my seam at the corner. I have one turned one way and one turned the other way, and then I'm putting a pin in there to make sure it stays where I want it. And then I'm going to do the last corner. Once again, I'm nesting the seams and putting a pin so that they stay where I want them. Now that I have that part pinned, I'm going to go up to the top and I'm just going to put a pin every few inches. Don't need lots of them. But I do want to make sure that nothing shifts around and that my edges are, I want to make sure that nothing shifts around and that my edges are all matched up. And I think I'm going to start sewing on this edge. So I'm going to put a double pin right here to remind me that that's where I want to stop sewing, and I'll leave a gap so that I can turn it. And see, that edge pretty much matches up, but I'm still going to put a couple of pins over there just to make sure that nothing shifts. And you could use clips for this as well. Pins are just what I have handy this morning. Now, we're going to go back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start sewing right here at this pin. And I'm going to lay it out as flat as I can get it. Take that pin out. And then I'm doing a slightly wider stitch around the top. And I will explain why when we get to the next step. Now here's my first corner. I'm just keeping everything flat and together. Stop just before the pen. And I've already got my other finger down here to hold it in place. When you get to the next side and you need to readjust, do that while you're not sewing. All the way to the corner here. I went a little too close to the pen. And I'm using my fingers to make sure that all the other fabric doesn't come bunch up, and to make sure that everything stays flat. You may notice that before I take the pen out, I put my other finger down here to make sure that it stays where I want. Okay, I'm getting close to the next corner. So I'm moving some things. I'm going to pull that pen out, but I've already got my finger there to hold that in place. And you can back stitch on these corners if you like. Not what I like to do, but I have seen people do it for stability. And we're coming to our last corner. There's my double pin. I'm going to take this one out. Use my finger to make sure everything stays where I want it. And I just back stitched a hair over that corner. All right, and then we're going to take these two pins out. Put them up there in the pin bit. And I stitched back and forth over that last little bit a couple of times. I'm going to snip any other threads that are sticking out of my way. Snip the threads from where I started. Put it all into my thread bin. And then here comes the fun part. This is such an easy project. You're going to reach in here, and a bigger opening is better, especially if you've only done this, a few times or have never done this. And you're just going to reach in and start turning your little basket out. You don't have to pull super hard, and you can use a tool to do this, especially if you have trouble with your hands. I know a lot of my viewers have arthritis and such in their hands. And I just keep turning until it's all inside out. Double check, make sure I don't have any holes anywhere except the one that I wanted. And then I'm going to push the lining, which is the white fabric, back down inside the green. It's a great time for an iron, just to make sure that your seams are all the way at the top. Here's my opening, and when I pull it tight, it just folds right in there. I'm going to go all the way around, making sure that my lining is pushed down in. Because what I don't want, although probably no one's ever going to see this bin but me and you guys, I don't want to see the white peeking up over the edge of the green. And you could make this out of the same fabric for the inside and the outside. I've done that. I've got a couple up there that way. There's my hands not wanting to cooperate. Okay. See how nice and crisp my little corner seams are? Because I did the nesting. I don't have a lump there, I have a nice seam. Okay, so I'm going to pick a spot and start sewing. And I'm actually going to sew from the outside because I want the outside to be nice and pretty. And I'm going to do about 1/4 of an inch top stitch all the way around. And I can continue to adjust if I want right there. This is way easier if you take the arm off your machine and do it like you would do a sleeve top stitch. And that noise was because I just went over a corner seam. Doesn't mean anything's wrong, it just means it was a little thicker there. You can tell I'm just pulling things taut and using my hands. And the word is taut, not taunt. There's no N in it. I get all philosophical when I'm sewing on camera. This is another one of those cases where if anybody's inspecting your work, looking for errors, tell them to go home. That isn't what this is all about. I've made bunches of these and still I make mistakes. I don't do everything perfect all the time. I probably don't do anything perfect, actually. But that's the beauty of sewing. If you don't get it right the first time, there's more fabric. You can make more. And see right there, that little white edge wants to stick up. Just gonna manipulate it with my fingers. Make it go where I want it to go. And I didn't back stitch at the beginning or the end, but I did stitch over a few stitches. That's a bag maker trick. And I've made a lot of bags, purses, and wallets and things. Okay, so now we have this nice floppy basket, right? I want some more stability in my basket. So I have a loose thread I missed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to each of these corner seams that I did, and I'm pushing the lining seam down in here too, so that it's all together. And then I'm using my fingers to do this. And then I'm going to pull this seam together and flatten it out. And I'm not going to sew all the way down the seam from there. I'm going to start just a little bit above it. And I'm running my finger in there. I want both seams matching. Now, most home sewing machines should be able to do this. If yours can't, try putting a heavier duty needle on your machine. I'm using a 9-12. It's going through it just fine. But I'm also starting at the bottom so that I'm sewing up to the thicker part. I'm going to do that same seam on all 4 corners. I'm just going to cut my threads off. I'm doing them as I go because otherwise I will forget. So that's the first corner done. Now I'm going to do the second corner. It doesn't matter which corner you start at. You can start at any corner you like, but it does matter that you have both the inside and the outside seam. So the seam for the outside piece and the seam for your lining caught in together here and nothing else. You want it flat. You go right here. I'm doing about 1/8 of an inch. Doing a little bit of a back stitch. And I'm going slow. I wouldn't try to power through this or sew it really fast. Because if you do, you could break a needle because it just doesn't like going that fast through this heavy fabric. That's 2 corners done. Now I'm going to come do the 4th corner. Once again, making sure that everything's pushed out as far as it'll push. And then putting that together, flattening it out on my sewing table, putting it under here. Speed is not the important element here. It's making sure that you get it sewn down, because this is going to give your box stability and help the sides to stand up better for you. The thread does not want to come loose. Okay. And we are to our last corner. Once again, push it out as far as you can push it. Get those seams lined up. straight. I'm doing 1/8 of an inch. And I'm showing you the corners in real time because I want you to see that it's easy to do. It's not really time consuming. In my opinion, I could be wrong. Thread is usually cheaper than interface. And I find it a pain to have to put interfacing on something like this that's purpose is literally just to hold fabric. Now, this is our box, okay? I've made mine wide enough that it could hold fat quarters, or it could hold yardage, or it could hold charm packs. And the box is standing up on its own without any issues. It's nowhere near as flimsy as it was before. And when you use these boxes, you can do a fold on them and put them away, fold them up kind of like a Christmas present and put them away. But I have a different reason for folding them like this. I'm going to lay this out like this, and I'm going to use my fingers to press down, and that leaves a crease in the box. And now I'm going to pick the box up, and where that crease is, I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew right along that crease. So here we go. Making sure I keep the side pieces out of here. Back stitch at the beginning and the end. Trim my threads. Then I'm going to turn it over and sew right along this bottom edge. Notice my side pieces are still out of my way. I'm doing, once again, 1/8 of an inch. The lining and the outer fabric are caught in the seam. My side is not in there. I'm not sewing all the way to the end. I am leaving a 1/4 of an inch or so, just so that I don't have and there's our bin. Now I think that stands up just about as well as interfaced bins do. And I can put things in this for storage and put them up on my shelf. Then I don't have to worry about what's there. So I have some cuts of fabric, various things, a little picture, just to show you that it will hold small things. I can set it up on a shelf. If I want, I could put a label on here. And my little bin, that fabric's not one to stand up straight, but I could put a label on the end of my bin, and then I have a little handle that I can pull in and out with. So, thank you for watching. You have a great day.